I love watercolor. And my mother was an oil painter, and it stunk. I couldn't stand the smell of it, although I did do some of it with her. But I really didn't get into painting until my children were in about high school or junior high. And I finally went back, and I wanted to learn watercolor, and there was nobody in Lenore that would teach it. Finally found a teacher in Hickory, and stuck with him for 5.5 years, even though he kept moving. And that's why I started teaching watercolor, because there was nobody there in Lenore teaching it. I have traveled across the country. A couple of years ago, my sister took me to China for 3 weeks, where she does a lot of working. So I have an awful lot of China pictures right now. And right now I'm getting ready to do the show at Edgewood Cottage up in Blowing Rock. And so I'm painting mountain scenes. But the outside, I live out in the country and overlook a beautiful valley and mountains. So I've got my inspiration right there in my studio. The Watercolor Society of North Carolina feels good to be part of it. And I have gotten a whole lot of people to come on and get on. I used to be kind of alone out there, but I have a lot of friends now who are members.
This is the final process and an example of a painting that I have done with the handmade paper. And you can see I made a background here of the mulberry paper, which I always love to tell everyone also that the Native Americans use that in an interesting couple of ways. Then this sheet here actually is the base sheet, and it has gotten a little bit of the abaca. It also has some of the mulberry, and perhaps I've put a bit of cotton in it. So as we mix that up and beat it and process, so I have put one large sheet, and then I have put a sheet of mulberry, and then I've actually got another sheet. I love to make thin sheets because when the paper is very thin, whatever you've put on the background, it's like glazing or layering watercolor. You're going to get a different color. So I love to do that. So some of it will bleed through. Then I continue painting in the traditional watercolor way, just getting my paints out, my brushes out, and maybe doing a sketch ahead of time, and then applying the color. I have a few examples here. Of course, cotton is a major part of handmade paper that is used, and everyone knows what cotton looks like. Cotton was a big product here in the South, and easy to come by. So it was great for making paper, it was great for making clothing, and so on and so forth. Another product that I use in making paper is abaca, or a banana leaf. And this is a wonderful fiber that, and I'll not go too much into the process, but all of this has to be processed and hydrated with water, and then beaten, and then pulled through a sieve to get the size and the shape that you want. This is probably my all-time favorite and one of the hardest to come by, and this is the mulberry, or sometimes it's called kozo, and you have to know a little bit of biology, and in fact that's one of the great things about art. It uses everything you've ever learned, but this is a piece of heartwood, and on the outside of this piece was the bark. And if you remember in your biology, there was the cambium layer, which was the xylem and the phloem, which took the nutrients to the leaves. And so you take off the bark and you strip out the cambium layer. And this is what you get, this wonderful fiber. And it makes paper that's very much like this. And I love to leave the deckled edges, as you can see here. That indicates that it was handmade by an individual. And this painting just above here, you might notice, is made and painted watercolor on the handmade paper. And it's the same as this, except it has been beaten a little bit more. This is another fiber that's extremely hard to come by and to process, very time consuming, but it makes a wonderful paper with a slight hint of green in it. And this is the mulberry weed, and some people call it a weed, but I love it, and I cultivate it actually in my garden, not only for paper making, but for the butterflies. And as we know that sometimes the milkweed is also endangered in some areas, as well as the monarch. So we need to be processing and taking care of our environment at the same time.
I'd like to talk about the Watercolor Society of North Carolina, because we've had this great opportunity to exhibit some of our work in the Morganton City Hall. The Watercolor Society of North Carolina was formed in 1972. At that time there were 18 members, and now there's over 400 members. And the mission of the Watercolor Society is to promote standards for the media, to educate artists and other people that are involved, to promote with workshops and that sort of thing, and to just sort of promote watercolor as a media to the people of North Carolina. If people are interested, there's a website. It's ncwatercolor.com. There's a newsletter where I decided to be a member of the board. I'm the assistant coordinator for the Western region, and my main purpose was to line up some places for us to exhibit, because you're going to see that we have some really, really beautiful work. If anybody is interested in having one of our exhibits, it would be nice if you could get in contact with the group through the website. About 25 paintings in this exhibit. A couple of people brought two, but mostly I think there are 22 artists. They came from as far away as Waynesville, Hendersonville, right here in this area surrounding Morganton, like Hickory and those cities, and then there's a group of us from Boone who also have some paintings in this exhibit. There is a neat collection of paintings, and there's going to be an opportunity for people to come and see it on the third Thursday of July from 5 to 8 as a part of the Morganton City Art Crawl. The City Hall will be open, and I hope you'll come by and see our beautiful works.